My name is Chrissy Chapman. I am a social work major and I am a second year in a 3-year program. I just like helping people out and I like seeing people in recovery. And both of my grandparents on my mom's side were alcoholics and they died from it. And my mom had a boyfriend who was also an alcoholic who passed away recently. So I've been depressed since about 8th grade. And I'm in recovery now from it. I started getting help last year, and being around EPR has helped because there are a lot of people I get along with and relate to. I do think it's hard to be successful emotionally and academically here because there's the counseling center, but not all those counselors are people that you can get along with. They're not people you can directly relate to. You have to find the right kind of personality to fit you. And emotionally, I think there does need to be a place where you can go at all times and feel comfortable, and that UNT doesn't have that. College life here tends to be a lot about going to parties, and that's how people classify fun, is going and getting drunk or high somewhere. Personally, I don't do that. I go watch movies with people, or I watch Netflix, or just go out and eat with my friends, and that's fun to me. The entire Alcohol Awareness Week, promoting awareness, not telling people not to drink, but letting them know what could happen if they do. And the picnic, the homecoming picnic, that was a lot of fun, getting our name out there. And what else happened?
So we're tailgating?
So we're tailgating. Yeah, that's a lot of fun. People like to look at the Party Sober shirts and not necessarily buy them, but they think we are there for a really good cause. Yes. I think people underestimate the value of being sober, or they just don't realize that that's not what college is all about. It's not about getting drunk, and I think it's kind of ridiculous personally because I don't drink and I still have a ton of fun, but I think students do need to learn that they can still be human and they can still relate to people without getting drunk. Yes, I know that EPR, most of the people are in recovery, and the ones that aren't support it. And all of the events obviously are sober, but then when you go hang out as friends, you don't focus on it. Everything is sober, and you don't even point that out necessarily. You just have fun with each other, and you acknowledge that it doesn't need to be. I'm distracted.
Doesn't need to be.
I don't remember. You can party sober and still have fun. That's what EPR is all about. Just having fun with people and not with substances.
Okay.
I know that Tim Trail is really awesome, educating people, but as far as actually helping students recover, EPR, we can't counsel anyone. We're only here for peer support, and I think that students need someone who they can work with one-on-one regularly and actually get treatment from, not medications and stuff like that, but they need someone they can talk to, that they can trust, that is licensed and is allowed to give them professional feedback. I don't think it's even geared toward prevention. I think it's geared toward, well, we know you're already drinking, so do it safely. So they don't have, prevention is more what they teach you in high school, and now you've already started, so you might as well be smart about it. So they don't have anything for people who have gotten addicted, and EPR is the only group I've seen that goes out and actually tries to help people who have gotten addicted and need help or want to learn about recovery. They don't have 24/7 resources. I know that, I'm not even addicted to any kind of substance. I don't use anything, but night times are really hard because that's when you're around less people, and that's really when you need people the most. So I think that if there was a 24/7 center for just going and talking to people, being around people, that's what we need right now. Because it would let them know that there are other people like them who are in recovery currently, and they're getting help for it, and they can relate to each other. They can make friends who are in the same boat they are, and there's no pressure there to go back to what they used to do.
What benefits would you see a CRP offering students that are at UNT that are in long-term recovery?
Happier students. It's true. people, I mean, you need to be around people who are like you and where you don't feel peer pressure of any kind. And if there is a CRP, then you would be around people who are teaching you, and you can teach them. You're learning all the time, and it's a healthy environment for them. But I think it would definitely be extremely beneficial, because it's not like every student here it has some kind of addiction, but a lot of people do, and for them it's necessary. I know more people who would benefit from a CRP at UNT than people who wouldn't benefit from one. Looking back now, it would, before I enrolled into college, it wouldn't have, because I didn't realize how I could recover and what it would feel like to feel better. Looking back now, though, definitely it would affect my decision to know that there are students who are so helpful and that there can be such a healthy environment that supports recovery. So I would definitely take that into consideration. Well, before I even joined EPR, I wasn't really doing anything. The only extracurriculars I was involved in were requirements for social work. And since EPR, every event that you guys put on, I try to be there. And with a CRP, if there was a space where I knew that there would always be people that I got along with and I had friends there and were supportive, then I would definitely go study there, and rather than just studying alone and getting distracted. Yes, the CRP would encourage me to become more involved, because that's what I want to do. Is I want to help people recover, like professionally. I want to be a counselor, a rehab counselor. So it would be really great for me to have hands-on experience by being involved with a collegiate recovery program. No, I don't think there's any focus on people who have substance abuse issues or anything. I mean, other than after they get in trouble for possession or doing something on campus that's against the rules, then they get in trouble and they have to go talk to someone. So there are consequences for that, but there's nothing that helps prevent them getting in trouble. So an addiction would be being dependent on something that's not necessarily healthy for you, and long-term recovery is becoming healthy again and learning to not depend on that so much, and finding other things to spread yourself over that are healthy but that you don't become completely dependent on, and you just get better and you live a healthier life and hopefully a happier life. It means that your long-term recovery at the college level is getting better so that you can become more successful in life, so that you can do well in your academic life. Socially, college is a time to build a lot of connections, hopefully lifelong connections, and that's what's going to set you up for your career. So you need a stable life in college to really be successful in the future. Well, EPR is basically a smaller and less official form of a collegiate recovery program, and to have a collegiate recovery program would officially and legitimately set students up for a more stable life that can lead them into a more successful future.
My name is Haley Riley. I'm majoring in psychology. I'm minoring in addictions and substance abuse and rehab, and I'm a junior. I'm interested in addiction and quality of life issues for students because I have family members and friends who have struggled with addiction and use in the past and currently, and I just would like to do what I can to be a part and help out and help the process of recovery for those that are in it and bring others to recovery who aren't. My experience with addiction in the past, my sister struggled with addiction for a while. She's currently in long-term recovery for over a year and a half now. My dad has struggled with addiction also, and I have friends that I know that are currently struggling, and it'd just be nice to be able to do what I can for them and offer them the resources that I know of or that potentially could be, and just to help out in any way that I can. My experiences with substance use disorder at UNT is just that UNT is very much or college in general is very much focused on the drinking and use aspect of the social life. So it's all about hitting up Fry Street or finding the party to go to, or just seeing what's going on at your apartment and drinking with friends. And so it's very much focused on drinking and partying. And so it'd be nice to find another outlet or a healthier outlet to have the same kind of social life that other people are experiencing elsewhere. Okay. The recovery culture and the current resources available to students at UNT are very much focused on the prevention and I guess healthy practice of substance use and drinking and living in moderation and not getting to the point of addiction. But there's nothing really besides EPR that is offered to help those that are already in recovery or have reached the point of addiction or past the point of addiction, and to, I guess, support them and help them through that. It's all about trying not to get you to that point. So we don't really have something as beneficial for those who have already reached the point of addiction or dealing with recovery right now. The services offered currently at UNT would be SARC, the Counseling and Testing Center, peer mentors, just things like that that help students deal with their everyday issues and things that they're struggling with currently, and just like day-to-day basis. And but they don't offer the services of helping somebody that is already in recovery and helping with that constant issue, that everyday issue, and that it's a constant struggle, and that once there's no further prevention, once the issue has been addressed, there's nothing more that they offer to help you continue towards progress or continue towards recovery. It's just okay. I definitely think a CRP program would be a benefit for students living in long-term recovery because it allows them to be in recovery and be embraced in that environment, that other people are going through the same thing and can support each other and have the same goals and want to succeed in the same academic, social, and recovery areas that they do, and it would allow them to have or combine both their academic and social life with their recovery process and just kind of walk down the path together in just this combined unity between recovery and school. I definitely think a collegiate recovery program is necessary for students in long-term recovery at UNT because as a university and as a student, I believe that the university is responsible for giving everybody the quality of life and the experience that they deserve in college and at that specific university. And I think that UNT offers a lot of other programs for other people in walks of life, in terms of their religion, in terms of their hobbies or practices, or just their beliefs. And I think people in long-term recovery deserve the same treatment and should have the same resources and environment to be able to go and be comfortable with who they are and what they're dealing with and what their views are, and be able to have the same experience the rest of us are having.
Absolutely.
If I personally were going through long-term recovery, the presence of a CRP program would greatly influence my decision of what college I were to choose while in the process of choosing a college. I think if it came between a college that had a program like this and one that didn't, I would definitely go to the one that did, because that's just an instant, you have access to that instantly the minute you walk onto campus. And I think long-term recovery for students at UNT would mean or provide them a better quality of life. I think it would allow students to achieve their maximum potential here at UNT, and I think that it would allow students to get the full college experience without being in fear, living in fear of their addiction.
My name's Natalie Jones, and I am looking to go to school at UNT in fall of 2014, and I am in long-term recovery. I was an alcoholic and a pill addict. I was a pharmacy technician for 6 years. I've dropped out of school 4 times. It wasn't really a super awesome road to go down. I've been sober for 5 months.
Okay. How did the whole process start?
Whenever I couldn't manage my life anymore and I couldn't go to school, I couldn't go to work, I started breaking down, crying, and then my brother got in a wreck and I wanted help. I want to go to UNT because I've always really wanted to go to UNT. I've always loved the Denton area, but I could go to TWU right now if I wanted to and pay in-state tuition, but UNT has EPR, and I know that that would be something that I would want to be a part of, and TWU doesn't have it. I would go to school more like in fall 2014 to go and be a part of CRP because I know that living in a sober living house right now is very beneficial to me to find my way in everyday life with work and stuff. Whenever I go to school, that's going to be another story because I'm afraid that I will be too stressed out or something, relapse and do something terrible that I don't want to do. And I think that being in a place with CRP would be very beneficial to not only me but to other people. My personal fears are meeting people and talking to people. And I know, like, because I'm so introverted, whenever I get nervous and stuff, I would, like, in my old using life, I would start using more so I could be more sociable and drinking more so I could be noticed, I guess. But because I'm working a program, I know that's not the way to go, and that's not how I want to live my life and meet people through drugs and alcohol. I think that CRP would be beneficial to me for my success at UNT with meeting people, having a support group, having peers that are going through the same recovery program that I'm going through and just working the program, having a goal and having stability. It would help being part of a CRP program with the school for my graduation through UNT because I would have people around me that would be influencing me to do better at school, to get my school stuff situated, still maintain a life, and just it be an overall better experience for me soberly.
Do you think that you've been at school before? Do you think living in long-term recovery, a school with a program like this, would encourage you to be more actively involved in different activities, whether that's academic or social, volunteering? Do you think this would get you more involved?
I think CRP would get me more involved with other people in the school system just because then I don't have to go home, drink, and try to go out and meet people. I would have people around me that are sober and trying to figure out their place in life soberly, and like I would be able to meet more people that way and have a better time. Long-term recovery for me at the college level would mean working a program, going to school, finishing school, staying sober, getting a master's degree, and getting my job and life situated so I don't have to rely on alcohol or drugs or my parents for the rest of my life. A CRP would help me achieve my goals and dreams that I want in life because I would have some sort of stability instead of just sporadic drinking and partying. I would like to see out of a collegiate recovery program structure and to help me to actually recover from all the classes that I've dropped out of, failed, or not attended, so then I don't have to keep retaking classes to raise my GPA up, so I can do that. I have not heard a lot of universities or colleges offer stuff like CRP and especially like EPR. Like the school that I went to, they offered a AA meeting, but I never went because I didn't know I had a problem. And then whenever I did figure out that I did have a problem, it was too late. And then I went to rehab. The fact that UNT is going to have possibly a collegiate recovery program is one of the main reasons why I would like to go to UNT.
I am Robert Ashford. I'm a social work major with minors in psychology and addiction studies, and I am a junior. I'm interested in addiction and quality of life issues for students. I myself am a person in long-term recovery. For me, what that means is that I haven't had a drink or a drug in over 7 months, which is huge. I spent over 10 years in active addiction, failed relationships with both personal and family, trying to go to college and not going to class anymore and flunking out or withdrawing from classes, losing jobs, and all of it was because of choices that I made, but they all kind of centered around the disease of addiction. If I had to say what my quality of life was, it was virtually non-existent. It was a step away from dead with everything that was going on, and it all stemmed from this disease of addiction, which I at the time didn't know how to get support for, whether it was treatment or peer support or anything to do there wasn't a lot available to me because I didn't know, one, know how to seek it out, and two, it's not like you're taught when you're coming up through elementary education, and it's not something that's talked about in the family style. So knowing that and knowing what I know now about addictions and having it and living with it, my interest is helping students and giving back to allow them to find the resources that I couldn't when I was going through this, so we can try to get them at the beginning of addiction or before they even get there, or for living in long-term recovery, providing resources that I had to spend a long time finding or creating at this point. So I've made long-term recovery and recovering from addiction, I think, my life at this point. My experience with addiction, not only personally, I am in long-term recovery, but I'm a child of an alcoholic father as well. He's a child of an alcoholic father, so it just runs rampant in my entire family. My brother's an alcoholic and a drug addict as well. So not only did I affect myself and the people around me, but I was affected by others that suffered from the disease of addiction. And it was like this never-ending cycle. It went from parent to child, from parent to child, from sibling to sibling. We were just immersed in it, and it's almost like you have no escape until you realize that there is help out there, that recovery is possible. Until you learn that fact, it's just a downward spiral. My experience with long-term recovery is fairly new. It started, like I said, at the beginning of this year in 2013. I had my last, what I would call a subjective rock bottom. My rock bottom was what finally initiated me to actively seeking help. I checked myself into treatment in downtown Fort Worth. Spent 45 days in treatment, inpatient, and finally learned what I needed to hear about the disease of addiction, how it presented and manifested in my life, what the actual problem was, and I started working a 12-step program, the Michigan model in treatment, and got a sponsor that required me and forced me to work through the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous to find recovery, to realize that the problem was internal, the problem was a problem of self, and that I did indeed have the disease of addiction. But more importantly is it allowed me to get into long-term recovery. So when I think of long-term recovery, I live a life now that is far better than it ever was before. That I don't have to drink or don't have to take a drug to change the way I feel anymore, because I'm content and peaceful with my surroundings and the life that I have now. Life is much better than it ever was before, and I want it to stay that way, and I know that as long as I stay in long-term recovery that I never have to go back to a quality of life that's subpar to anything that I experience now, even on my worst days. I've been to quite a few colleges, so I think when I ponder about what substance use disorder or substance abuse is in the college setting or in college life, and especially in the social setting, every college campus I've ever been to, it's very prevalent. And you think of not necessarily what's required, but if you're going to socially exist at any college level from 18 even to 25 or 26 like I am now, it's almost a requirement that you're going to go to parties. Every college has a block of bars and restaurants right near their campus. Ours is Fry Street, that you're kind of defined by how often you go out, how often you go to frat parties, you go to a party, how often you drink at home with your friends. Everything is submerged in this. You have to be able to drink and use substances because that's how everybody defines fun. It's not, hey, let's go kayaking tomorrow. It's, hey, let's go to the bar tomorrow and have a couple shots because it's 50-cent wells. That's how college life is presented. It's hardly ever about academics. It's cramming before the test, but what about the 2 months before? Is it, hey, did you do that project? Or, hey, do you want to go study tonight? No, it's, hey, do you want to go to the bar tonight? Everything everybody talks about is centered around this party atmosphere. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. There's plenty of students that can still have those kind of social interactions, and they can use and drink and use drugs even successfully, meaning that they don't suffer from addiction. They don't have this disease. They can pick it up and put it down as they see fit. But for those of us that can't, like me, that actually have the disease of addiction, when you're presented with this social stigma that if you don't go out and do these things that you're no fun, or you're not a good person, or nobody likes you, that is detrimental when you can't do those things. So if I'm defined by my peers as not being a fun person because I can't go out to the bar because that's what they expect in a college setting, then my quality of life is not where it would be if I could go out and drink. So I'm being marginalized by my disease rather than being uplifted for choosing to be abstinent. And I think most college campuses in the country, in the U.S., probably around the world, universities all have that culture that you have to go out to drink to be socially accepted, and that's kind of ridiculous.
Describe your impression of current college life at UNT.
Current college life at UNT is very similar to those around other college campuses. There's a heavily influence and need to go out and party and drink because it's college after all. People want to go to parties, people want to go to Fry Street and have a good time and be socially accepted. there's probably research that since we're a commuter school that it's not as heavy as other college campuses in the party scene, especially since we have a lot of family members coming in and commuting. But at the end of the day, we do have a street that's predominantly bars that most people spend their time on. You look on Facebook or social media, it's where you go in the night, which bar are you going to. So while there's a focus on academics, just like at any college campus, I think more so there's a focus on what the nightlife scene is like. So in that manner, UNT is no different than any other college campus in the United States. There's a heavy focus on partying. At the University of North Texas, there's a lot of services available to students, and there's a lot of educational resources available that try to help prevent or educate students how to safely use alcohol or substances. Maybe it's harm reduction or prevention. So you've got places like the Substance Abuse Resource Center that psychoeducates students that get in trouble for various violations of the Code of Conduct with the students. You have counseling and testing that's also in the Student Health and Wellness Center you can have up to 8 sessions individually as a student each long-term semester to deal with immediate issues and counseling issues. You've got the psychology clinic, you've got the Dean of Students, care teams, you've got peer mentors. You have all these resources available to students before they actually hit that point of addiction. So we have a bunch of that. We have limited resources for immediate problems to students, but there's almost no resources for students that are living in long-term recovery from addiction as a disease, meaning that if I'm trying to sustain a continuum of wellness, there's no resources at UNT for that. The closest thing that you have to it is Eagle Peer Recovery, which started only a few months ago, but it's the only thing that promotes recovery protection, actually staying in long-term recovery from an addiction as a disease. None of those other services that we have are focused on that. They're all focused on prevention. So what are we doing for students that are actually in long-term recovery? Because there's almost 600 of them estimated if you use Texas Tech's numbers. And if that's correct, then we have 600 students that don't have the services and resources that they need. And it's time to make a change because they deserve the option to have a quality of life and a college experience that's just the same as everybody else's, within reason. There's a responsibility by the university to give students like me and the other 599 on campus that deserve a normative college experience, and we don't have that right now. I think what's lacking in the services is realizing that chronic diseases like addiction, cancer, diabetes, these things there's immediate needs and then there's long-term needs. And the problem with our services currently, where they lack, is that they don't look at the long-term care that's required for these students and services that are needed for long-term care, which means, in their college life over a span of 4 years, if you're in long-term recovery, you need something those entire 4 years. You don't just need 8 counseling sessions. You need peer meetings. You need financial assistance. You need sober living facilities. You need advanced academic advising. There's a lot of services and resources that can be utilized to make a academic career successful for a person in long-term recovery that none of those services provide. They're all immediate need. They're not long-term need, and that's where the disparity lies. I know a lot about collegiate recovery programs. I've kind of immersed myself in this lifestyle since coming to UNT in July and creating Eagle Peer Recovery with Tim Trail and Sage Garber and bringing collegiate recovery to a college setting. We started with a student organization, and we've done a lot of research and partnerships with the collegiate programs at Ohio State, Penn State, Rutgers, Texas Tech, who's had one since 1988, the University of Texas in Austin, and we've done a lot of work with the Stacey Matheson Foundation in this capacitite and asset building technique to bring collegiate recovery programs and communities to UNT specifically. So we've spent the last 6 months doing a tremendous amount of research to bring this here. So by no means am I an expert, but there is a lot that I know about it because I'm naturally invested in it because I'm in long-term recovery and a student as well. Absolutely, a collegiate recovery program at UNT would be vastly beneficial to the students that are living in long-term recovery. Not only does it improve academic success, it allows students to really reach their maximum potential. Graduation rates are theorized to go, and there's even evidence that they go up anywhere from 10% to 25% for students that are in a CRP and long-term recovery versus the actual average for the schools. Retention rates are up possibly to 12%, which is, in the university model, retention and graduation rates are the thing that you need to keep. And that all points to that the CRP, those students are getting services and resources made available to them and utilizing them to increase those rates. So obviously it's doing something correctly, which would stand to reason that the benefit to students in long-term recovery with a CRP versus not having a CRP is exponential, and it's huge. A collegiate recovery program is necessary at UNT because we have a marginalized group of students, a minority, estimated at about 600 that would directly benefit or qualify for substance use disorder and could be in long-term recovery and benefit from this. It's necessary because we have a responsibility not only as students, but as a university to provide those affected by addiction with the same opportunities and chances that every other student has. What that means is providing a CRP, it's providing meetings, it's providing advanced and specialized academic advising, sober living facilities, everything that we do for every other student group, such as LGBTQ, for disabled students, for minority groups and international students, any group that has a chance for a subpar quality of life or college experience, we have that responsibility to facilitate it not being that way. So if we can do it, then we have a responsibility to do so, and that's why the CRP needs to be established here. I know a lot of students that would benefit from a CRP at the university, myself being one of them. This is a program that I wish existed when I got here in June, and it's a program that I hope exists in the near future because just personally in Eagle Peer Recovery and the people that I've met that haven't joined because they're afraid that they're going to be associated with a stigma that they don't want to be in their academic careers, I can count on probably 40 off the top of my head that would want to be involved in it, and that's just with the people that I know over the last 5 months. So you can imagine that that number estimated at 600 is every bit true. So I think there's a wide array of students that would benefit from it. When I decided to come back to school after treatment and getting into a sober living facility, I did look at schools that had collegiate recovery programs versus that didn't. I looked at UTA, which does have a new CRP that was established this fall. I looked at Texas Tech, and those were the top three. It was UNT, UTA, or Texas Tech. Where was I going to go? The other two I almost did go to instead of UNT because they had those programs. But in talks with my counselors and therapists and in talks with the admissions counselors here, I saw a need that a CRP needed to be established here. Why I went to UNT was for the opportunity to bring long-term recovery to students and recovery support services to UNT. But since it was such a struggle to decide where I wanted to go, I would imagine for every student, including me, that if a university had a CRP or not was going to be a huge factor in making that decision to go there or not. The University of North Texas offers a lot in terms of services for students, especially being diagnosed with co-occurring disorders, bipolar as well, and registered with the ODA, not only for my bipolar disorder but also substance use disorder. There's a lot of accommodations that give me a lot of services that are available. But the problem is that there's no services and resources available outside of what we bring in externally for students in long-term recovery like myself. We've had to bring in meetings, we've had to find a group of peers and establish them in a group ourselves. We had to facilitate it ourselves, which would have been much easier to do with university support, like if they had established this collegiate recovery program. So actually offering us, I think the biggest thing would be scholarships, would be a university-endorsed CRP, meaning that we had a 24-hour, 7 days a week recovery center, so we could go at any given time, if I'm being emotionally cued or triggered, that we can go to this recovery center to have a safe haven, to have a safe place to go. That's the one thing UNT could offer us in terms of a CRP and what we need to make it most beneficial. I don't think the university is necessarily not focused on the issue of long-term recovery and the disease of addiction. I think the focus is more so on prevention and getting students to safely drink alcohol because they think that it's going on, and it is going on, and it's an issue. Binge drinking is huge among college populations. But we need to refocus or increase our focus to include students that are in long-term recovery that have already passed the point of addiction, they have the disease. We need to include them in the focus of how can we best benefit them, because as of right now, they're not in that focus. I think achieving my greatest potential at UNT has become much easier since I've found peers that are in recovery, living in long-term recovery, have found faculty like Paula Garland and Tim Trail, Maureen McGinnis, Dr. McGinnis, and the Dean of Students, people like Hope Garcia and Student Affairs that have really empathized with what's going on and have allowed us to create something in Eagle Peer Recovery and hopefully a CRP to reach that greatest potential. I think we've come a long way to achieve academic success by creating a peer group that allows us to study together and be around like-minded people in the same degree programs. But there's a lot that could still be done to really achieve maximum potential, both academically and emotionally. Because at the end of the day, we're in long-term recovery and learning how to live there. It's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. So there's a lot more room to grow both in our relationships with the university and individually. Having a collegiate recovery program on the university would allow each student individually to achieve their maximum potential, and that is academically, emotionally, and socially. Everything that it would intentionally offer would be to promote a quality of life and wellness. And by wellness, it's every facet of life. It's academics, it's social acceptance and peer support, and it's emotional growth. So a CRP, by all intents and purposes, does just that by existing in the first place. So I think if we create one here, we allow each student to reach maximum potential, which in a higher education setting should be exactly what we're trying to do. I think myself, if we're talking collegiate recovery program at UNT and actually creating one, specifically what I would like to see is specialized academic advising, sober living facilities, whether that's a real learning community at one of the residence halls that exist or off-campus housing, financial assistance in terms of scholarship. If a student is meeting certain requirements, they have certain recovery milestones, then let's give them assistance to stay in school and help ease the financial burden, because that's something every student in recovery is probably dealing with. Offering advanced counseling, much more so than the 8 sessions you can get with a counselor in counseling and testing. Let's get some LCDCs in and actually offer substance use disorder counseling, because they have specific issues that are out of the range and scope of normal LPCs and just counselors in general. Let's have sober events. We've created the Party Sober Crew with Eagle Peer Recovery, and they're everywhere. We have shirts, and everybody's embracing that lifestyle. But let's make it campus-wide. Let's get more funding in and endorsement to create more sober events. Let's live or have a lifestyle on campus that's catered around having fun at the event and the activity, not the substances that are brought to that, which is stuff that we already do, but and most specifically what a CRP and what it should bring to the university is that 24/7 recovery center, because there's times throughout the day and people are all different, but when they're emotionally cued and when they're triggered to go back to it when life is hard, having that safe place for them to go, no matter what time of day, is the most vital part, I think, besides just supporting them verbally, is having that center for them. That's the one thing that we need that will set us apart in that recovery program. So I think that's the most important. Long-term recovery at the college setting for me means that I no longer feel the need that I have to use drugs or alcohol to change the way that I feel, that I have a higher connection to a higher power, which I call God, and that I fit in where I'm at, that I have one life. I'm not living a recovery life over here and a college life over here, that anytime when I wake up, my college and academic life and my recovery life are this one single entity, that I come to school and I can get recovery and I can get education all in one place, that I have a group of peers and friends that are just like me or have similar interests or similar likes and dislikes, and that we all get along and that there's no pressure to do one thing or another, and that I am genuinely happy. I mean, that's the one thing that I feel like I was missing in active addiction, was a peace of mind and happiness that I do have now. And a lot of that is thanks to what UNT has done for me and the peers that I've met. But to stay in long-term recovery, I want it to continue to be that way. And it's long-term. It's not just for today. It's not for tomorrow. It's for the rest of my life, and especially my college life. I think long-term recovery here has to include the university. Addiction to me is not having a choice. And when I realized finally that I had the disease of addiction, it's that I had a spiritual malady inside me that really focused without a higher connection to God, that I was selfish and self-centered, and because of all of that, my solution was to use drugs and alcohol to change the way I felt. This idea that I was irritable, restless, and discontent because of life exists regardless of the disease of addiction, and most people deal with it, but the way I chose to deal with it was by using drugs and alcohol. And at some point, once you start that and you go down that path, that's the only coping skill you have. So every time something got bad, or shit, at some point, sometimes when it just got good, my only mechanism was to use drugs and alcohol. And that's addiction. When you don't have a choice whether or not you're going to pick up, or if you do pick up, when to put it down. It doesn't matter about self-will. Addiction means that you don't have the control over it anymore. Normal people still have a semblance of control. They can decide when to stop drinking or when to stop using. I couldn't. So to have addiction is a debilitating disease that's chronic, and it's one of the worst experiences I've ever had in my life, is living in active addiction. But on the flip side, living in long-term recovery is one of the best. So, in my past college experience, I was in active addiction, every single one of them. So what that looked like for me was not going to class, just going on test day and drinking, 5 out of the 6 nights, and it was binge drinking, like most college students do. and it exacerbated my addiction. I went into college probably not being an addict yet, or not crossing over this invisible line that they talk about with the disease of addiction. But very quickly I was, because I did drink, and it was socially acceptable to drink just as much as I did because I was in college. It was seen as this idea that it's only one time in your life and you're allowed to get a little bit crazy. Unfortunately, with genetic disposition to being an alcoholic, as most of my family was, especially on the male side, and having all these other genetic factors, it's not okay. And I was taught to believe, really, growing up, that it was okay. And even while I was in it, it was okay, and not necessarily frowned upon by faculty or the college staff or anything else. Everybody was like, it's fine. But at the end of the day, that attributed to me becoming a true blue alcoholic and addict. So that needs to change, and that's what we're trying to do at UNT is change this mentality that it's okay because you're in college. It's not okay. It's not okay for anybody to act like that. It's not okay to binge drink or to hurt people and make decisions that affect other people's lives. And it's not okay for us to be making addicts and alcoholics of our children because we don't want to talk about the disease. The disease is real, addiction is real, and it is a disease. It's not a choice, it's not self-will, it's nothing else. It's a chronic disease that affects everybody it surrounds, not just the person addicted. And on the other side, long-term recovery is real, and it is possible, and we have to promote that. We have to allow kids the possibility of long-term recovery so they don't have to live life like addicts. And the benefits that we can reap from that on a university level and on a societal and a personal level is huge. And to not talk about it anymore and to say that it doesn't exist is not something we can do.